We're literally stimulating summer like every single day. So you're just creating this mitochondrial dysfunction, and mitochondrial dysfunction is tied to like about 85+% of diseases. Why would various people who are higher up than us want to encourage people to do stuff that's free when they can make a bunch of money from us when we're sick?
Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother. It's a pleasure to be here. It's currently sun just rose here in Thailand, so I'm ready to go.
Very cool. Yeah, it's fun coordinating with you to do a time to do this. I think we're almost on opposite sides of the world, so it's amazing time to be alive. So
Absolutely.
to get started, like to ask the guests if you've ever overcome anything in your health that maybe defied the odds a little bit, at least in terms of what the conventional paradigm of health and well-being would tell you. And if you could share a little bit about that to what brought you to today.
Of course. So I think probably the big one would be my testosterone levels. It would have been in 2020. My testosterone was around. So this is standard international units here. I'm not entirely sure what it'd be in the US, but it was around 5 to 6. I believe that's nanomole a liter. Probably around like 150, I think. So that's total testosterone. And then my free testosterone was obviously very low as well. This was even lower than some 70-year-olds, apparently. I searched online after I got the number. I was like, wow, this is really low. And I was feeling it in terms of symptoms and just energy levels. And went and saw a couple of doctors, saw a general practitioner, and he referred me to an endocrinologist. That's how they do it in Australia. And the endocrinologist put me on a bunch of estrogen blocking medication that is used for females who have breast cancer. So when I actually gave the prescription to the chemist, they just looked at me kind of funny, like, "Oh, you don't look like a female." So that was a bit unusual, but yeah, then I just went around jumping through hoops with Western medicine and couldn't figure it out. And then I started to just do my own research. I found a few people online that actually shared some valuable information beyond just like diet and exercise related stuff. And that's when I dove into like the circadian biology side of things, light, nature, even stress and trauma as well, and just really decentralizing my health basically. And that's when I started to see the best results, funnily enough. And that's when I started to lose somewhat a bit of faith in Western medicine per se. Again, I think they do serve their purpose in various aspects of health, but we rely on them too much and we need to start becoming our own doctors again. So yeah, let's flash forward maybe 2.5, 3 years now, after a bunch of research and curiosity and stuff. And I actually just got my testosterone checked again recently. And this was with like 4 to 8 hours of sunlight. I was sleeping well. I was eating not that much, probably like 2/3 of what I should be eating, like 1,800 calories to 2,000 calories, where I should be eating probably closer to 3,000 according to just general nutritional advice. And yeah, my testosterone was above the optimal range for both free and total. So, and that was with no help with any doctors. It was just my own personal research. And yeah, that's probably one of the most important things in my health journey, I think, is the fact that I was able to get that number up. And obviously, like that, it's just, at the end of the day, it is just a number, but also symptoms wise, it's all like I feel the best I've ever felt as well. So there's a bit in that too. So yeah, it's been a pretty amazing journey.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. That word, amazing. I mean, sure, a lot of people would love to optimize their hormones, but also just feel, brand new, better than ever. Can't ask for much more than that when it comes to your health, and especially, if you've gone through a health dip, suffered, struggled through it, then you really know what that's like and really appreciate just what it feels like to feel like yourself, have good energy, be able to wake up and do what you want to do all day. So and that's part of why I invited you on and wanted to talk with you, just to go through some of those principles that you used and some of your vast knowledge. I mean, you mentioned a couple things, but you have a huge breadth of knowledge and things that you talk about. So we'll try and corner a little bit of it and give people at least a slice. Since this isn't going to be a 6-hour episode, but to start, I mean, would you say circadian biology was the biggest factor, or if not, what was it? And before, maybe we'll just, if you can just give kind of an overview of just either a definition or just a basic idea of what that is, and we'll start to dial in. Because again, taking it back to anyone listening who wants to optimize hormones, increase energy, feel better, we'll start to talk about how some of these principles, which are outside anything a conventional doctor is going to give you, so people can have that option if they want to go down these roads.
Absolutely. So in terms of circadian biology, what we need to think about is probably the best example is that like you can think of our body like an orchestra. Um, and up in the top of our brain is something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is in our hypothalamus, which controls pretty much all of the clock genes throughout our organs. And you got to think, if we did have everything turned on all at the same time, it would just be not very efficient. And as humans, we're quite advanced as a race. So you think we have mechanisms in place, and in fact we do. And it's dictated by our light and dark cycles, which is AKA our circadian rhythm. So another example is like if you're going to sleep, you're not going to have like your gut clocks running and digestion kicking in and things of that nature, right? Because it just would be incredibly inefficient. It may affect your sleep architecture. So yeah, it's just basically having that fine tuning of what is turning on, what's turning off. And that is predominantly governed by the light that we are under and the darkness that we're under as well. Other factors there is like temperature as well. So this is why it can be a bit problematic when you are living under artificial light and under an air conditioner or heater. You're giving yourself the wrong environmental signals, basically. Nutrition as well is a big role in terms of seasonality component of it and the timing of the meals as well. So there's big components there. And then also exercise as well is playing somewhat of a minor role. So again, like people who are training, say late at night at like 8 o'clock and the sun has gone down and if they're training under artificial light and they'll maybe have dinner afterwards. It's like, yeah, you may be doing a good thing going to the gym, but you're burning the candle at both ends, right? It's one step forward, two steps back, basically. And that's going to affect how hormones are operating, because we've got to remember that light is the biggest driver of what is going on in our biology in terms of these mechanisms. Let me know if you want me to go deeper in terms of that sort of stuff. But that was something that I was very much not aware of. And I was training late at night. I was going on my phone late at night. I was going on my phone early in the morning. I didn't get much sunlight. I was eating bloody mangoes and pineapples in the middle of winter in Melbourne, which you'll never ever see a tropical fruit being grown there. So yeah, it's just about copying nature basically and having that seasonality component. Traditional Chinese medicine has somewhat been speaking about this for a long time. We've got the yin and yang component, and they talk about foods being hot, foods being cold. So it has been ingrained in various cultures. It's just we've lost that in the modern world because it's just access to everything. And in terms of technology, in terms of food, in terms of anything really, it's just like we have 24/7 access to everything, and it can create huge problems.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Because even when you say some of the stuff, like I remember when I first started learning a bit about it, it's really easy. I mean, it just shows how out of touch we are, how much we've lost it. But it's pretty easy to hear it and be like, yeah, that would probably be a good idea to, time myself a little bit better with the sunrise and sunset. For me, it was like, yeah, I could definitely get to bed before 1 a.m. or midnight a little more often, but just discount it, right? Or even the temperature one too. It's like, what's wrong with using modern comforts, AC in the summer and heat in the winter to keep it comfortable. So yeah, I think it would be great to start to dig in a little deeper, because when people hear the effect that has, like, no, it's not just it's not just a good idea. It's like, here's how your entire hormone system can get thrown off by that. Here's how your body doesn't know what season or time it's in, and therefore it can't give the instructions to the rest of the body to operate the way it's supposed to. And then we do that over 5, 10, 20 years. That all adds up. And it starts to paint a picture of where we get to now in the modern world with so many people struggling with health, despite making a lot of effort. I mean, more than ever. I remember probably 15 years ago when I discovered nutrition, and it totally changed, like, night and day, how much better I felt. And it was just a real big wake up call. But even then, 15 years ago, it was still, I'd still get a lot of like side comments like, oh, come on, like, you know, only eating a salad, or why, how could you not be eating gluten? Like, it was still a little bit weird idea. Fast forward to today, a lot of people are aware of those ideas and really make much more of an effort. Like back then, I kind of felt a little bit alone doing it. Like I was mid 20s, none of my friends were doing that. And it was just a little bit of an oddball thing. But today, a lot of people do it, but still, they're like, I've tried 6 different diets. I've made all these efforts, but people still aren't feeling well. So I think understanding how some of this stuff works, that's maybe easy to gloss over on the surface, but as you go deeper, the way you do and the way you teach, it really puts it into perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best example you can give in terms of understanding this circadian stuff and how detrimental the light stuff can be is if we just flash over to summer for a second. Um, you'd almost just be at the end of your summer, right? September, October, are we? Yeah. So this time frame is like there's longer light cycles. Um, it's still somewhat hot. I mean, there's obviously a bit more stability in somewhere like California, but like hypothetically, maybe like northern latitudes. Um, so yeah, you have like this summer, and like food is flourishing. Like there's plenty of food. It's all growing. Lots of carbohydrates and all those kinds of things. And that's a signal to our body that summer and fall time that, oh shit, like winter's coming, right? There's going to be a bit of scarcity in winter, right? There's probably going to be a little bit of like less plant foods, more animal fats, more like animal foods in general. Um, and our body almost has like through these light cycles will somewhat create a little bit of insulin resistance, just because we are eating more carbohydrates. So in the mitochondria, we're going to get more pulses at complex 1 of the mitochondria, which is like this electron transport chain found in all of our cells, throughout or every single mitochondria, which literally harvests the electrons and protons from food into energy, basically. And now with fats, it goes through complex 2. So there's less of a jump. So then there's less of an effect in terms of oxidative stress, because oxygen is heavily interacted there with the electrons. Now, if we have that slight inflammation, that's technically a good thing, because we are going to store a little bit of fat tissue and become somewhat insulin resistant to a degree, to be able to utilize that fat in the winter, right? That's when fasting and things of that nature also are involved. And we are literally somewhat living on our fat stores to a degree when it is somewhat scarce. Now, if you flash over to what's going on in winter in the modern world, it is very much lots of blue light up until probably 9, 10 p.m. And again, that blue light, like if you think of like the length of it, it's probably like the length of like summer as well. But also the fact that the color temperature in LEDs and phones and screens all are roughly more or less equivalent to the same color temperature as solar noon, except it lacks the ultraviolet and infrared components of light, which have their own benefits in themselves. And what we're basically simulating there. And then, of course, on top of that, in the winter, we got like the heaters going, and those heaters, I'm not sure what it would be in Fahrenheit, but 20 to 24 degrees seems to be the sweet spot for a lot of people. And that also happens to be, a pretty common temperature to occur in the summertime, right?
Right. Like a room temperature, probably 70 degrees in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And yeah, we just got to think, what is it? What are we simulating there? We're literally stimulating summer like every single day, you know? Um, and as I said, as I mentioned about and then we haven't even spoken about the food component as well. Obviously, people are eating out of season as well, high carbohydrates and stuff, which is, I have no issues with high carbohydrates, but it just has to be in the right season. It has a seasonality component in terms of how much you should be having, really. But again, so you're just creating this somewhat insulin resistance chronically mitochondrial dysfunction. Um, and mitochondrial dysfunction is tied to, like, I think Doug Wallace mentioned it's about 85+% of diseases are tied to this bioenergetic component. Um, and then also tying it in with the circadian component as well. So we are literally creating this endless summer, which is just not sustainable. And then in the winter, yeah, no one's getting cold. No one's like, well, people are fasting, but they're fasting under the wrong light conditions as well, which is an issue in itself. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the hugest examples to give for it to be, for like listeners to be like, wow, shit, this is actually going on. Um, and we've created the world like this, and it's just, yeah, it's wild.
So this endless summer that we created, what is that? It's creating mitochondrial dysfunction. What is it? What's the body? What message is the body getting as it continues to get the warmer temperatures, continues to get um, light, and maybe you can even, and just for anybody who's not that familiar with circadian principles, you could even touch on that a bit. Like, why is it a problem that the phone emits blue light? Like, what is that telling the body, and how do these things stack up to throw the body off?
So from like a hormonal perspective, it's going to be, because there's more blue light in the summertime, and there's definitely more blue light in simulated summertime. That's what we'll call it, simulated summertime in the wintertime. That's going to affect something called, so you've got cholesterol, which forms pregnenolone, and then pregnenolone goes into the mitochondria and forms all sex and steroid hormones. So that's your testosterones, estrogens, DHEA, DHT as well. And then, of course, you've got the glucocorticoids like cortisol, and then aldosterone as well, which are predominantly, they're in the right amounts, they're good. Um, but obviously, this endless summer is going to drive high cortisol levels, high aldosterone levels, which plays a big role in terms of the stress response. You can think of issues like anxiety, depression, and things of that nature as well. Dopamine gets heavily affected, and other neurotransmitters. But talking about the pregnenolone, that's something called pregnenolone steal syndrome. And that's something I think I definitely had when I had issues, because I mean, I didn't really get my cortisol checked when I got my testosterone checked, but I imagine it would have either been really high and out of balance, or it would have been just so low because I've been so burnt out. And that's the other issue. It's like the endless summer is creating just like this like high pulse of just stress hormones constantly, that eventually you get something called adrenal fatigue as well. Um, and it just disrupts the whole system. Like, if we are in that chronic sympathetic state, then the vagus nerve doesn't work properly. Gut issues are, you know, that's where gut dysbiosis occurs, just across the whole gut. That's where things like melanin as well, if we are lacking the sunlight, but melanin is required in our body to do a lot of work throughout, not just in our skin, but the whole nervous system, basically. So degrading that melanin through this sympathetic response and just oxidative stress and inflammation in general creates a recipe for disaster. I feel like you had another section to that question, but
No, it's okay. It's good. I mean, the topic is so deep, so we'll just keep stepping along, and
love it.
just bear with me because sometimes I slow things down and try and give a baseline because there's a huge kind of a variety of listeners that we have. But on that note, just the closing part of melanin. What is melanin, and how does it get degraded?
So melanin it's derived from something called tyrosine, and other things that are made from tyrosine is dopamine, thyroid hormone, CoQ10, noradrenaline, adrenaline. Um, and melanin is our, so whenever we're under sunlight, and actually this actually occurs in cold stimulation too, hence why like Eskimos somewhat can be tanned. But this if we're just talking about sunlight specifically, what it's doing is, especially in like the UVA UVB range, is the signal is it breaks DNA, and that's when people say, oh, that's bad. But it's just a signal. And this is why like oxidative stress in general isn't necessarily bad when it's quantized to nature. Hence what I spoke about before with like the slight insulin resistance is acting as like a positive signal per se. Um, and this increases melanin basically. And this melanin, just like the centralized perspective of it, is it just like is a pigment, and somewhat protects us from the sun, although they still say to avoid the sun because of that, which makes not much sense. But it also acts as, well, it's literally like a Swiss Army knife. It can absorb, if you think of it like a solar panel, basically, it can like absorb sunlight and not only dissipate it as heat, but dissipate it, like it acts as like a semiconductor. So it can literally shuttle energy through like electrons into the system, basically, which is pretty cool. And that can be fed into the mitochondria. That can be fed like into free radicals and neutralize them. Um, so yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's found to be like antifungal, like modulates the immune system as well, which is awesome. And then it also can break down when we have no UV light, because UV light drives the synthesis of dopamine and thyroid hormone and stuff as well. But melanin almost acts like a reservoir that can degrade back into those as well when UV light's missing, and that's essentially what is supposed to happen to a degree. In those winter months as well. So you obviously see things like seasonal affective disorder and issues with mood in the winter. Generally, people are quite pale. So yeah, it's just like if you have that toxin load, inflammation just chronically, melanin's going to degrade basically.
Okay, because it has so many uses, and the body uses it dealing with that overload.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's just like, and I'm amazed at what I found when I like research it. Like I've only probably like researched for the last year or so, and I used to just think it was just like a pigment and that's it. And then read a few books and found like, if you get like on my Twitter, I think I have like an actual thread that has like 200 melanin articles, and it's just like when you go through those, you're like, wow, like this molecule is pretty impressive. And you got to think as well, like we're one of the like, I mean, we evolved to not have hair, so what's that about, right? Like it's obviously we've learned to harness melanin and sunlight in general, basically, to be utilized to our advantage to become such an advanced species.
Right. So then, devil's advocate. I mean, it does sound like such an amazing molecule. The endless summer sounds pretty good. It's like, let's just build up as much melanin as possible.
Well, the thing is though, if you are having that endless summer, it's like you're only under blue light. You're not under ultraviolet light at all. And that blue light in itself, if you think of it, so if you look at a rainbow, you've got like violet and then you've got blue. So you got to remember that ultraviolet would be sitting just above that, and ultraviolet does have high energy. Um, and then obviously on the other end of the rainbow there, we've got red, and then we've got infrared. And that infrared is 42% of sunlight. And that's also missing in tech devices and LEDs and things of that nature. So it's just, if you look at like a emission spectra of any of these devices, it's just this massive, sharp peak of blue. And that's not great at all. That's high energy photons that are hitting our body, hitting our system, and the first things to go there are like our surfaces, our skin and our eyes are heavily affected. So that's why you generally see a lot of people with eczema or psoriasis or acne, or macular degeneration or myopia, right? Um, so you actually don't really build melanin in those conditions. So again, it's just like tying back to you just short circuiting the system basically.
Okay. So our bodies prefer the full spectrum of light, like the rainbow example.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like we're missing that. The infrared is like the other side of the equation that is just huge as well. So you're building melanin with the UV light, but you're also building melatonin with the infrared light. It's also building up collagen and influencing our mitochondria in a positive fashion. Um, and it also makes us more quantum coherent in terms of like our water networks, which literally makes us, like to put it simply, like an incredibly efficient battery, basically. Like it literally makes us a quantum computer. Like we are just running so efficient. And the collagen, the mitochondria, they are, and the water are all act as semiconductors, and they all tie in with the system. Basically, if you think of like the fascia, which is predominantly water and collagen, or derivatives of collagen, that carries, that literally helps shuttle energy and information throughout the system, alongside melanin and various other proteins and stuff. So it's just like goes beyond just like mitochondria making ATP. Because that's like the centralized perspective is just, yeah, we've got ATP that we make from food, but it's like, well, That's just only one part of the equation. We've also got sunlight that helps us. Like, I mean, it just doesn't make much sense that we have this massive star that's 4 billion years old, and we haven't learned how to harvest the energy from it properly, right? And that same with ties in with grounding as well. We've just got other outlets in terms of energy as well. So yeah, I think I just went on a bit of a tangent there, but let me know
Ah,
if you want
but
me to dissect any of it.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's great. Even that last part you said, like I think I would have been well, it all makes sense when you hear it, but I would have never said that probably even 5 years ago that I would have thought you get energy from food and the sun feels good, feels warm, enjoy being out there, but not a lot of awareness that actually that could be a key energy source or the grounding on the earth that you mentioned.
And I was, I guess initially when you hear it, you're like somewhat skeptical. But I mean, as I said before at the start, it's like um, I was eating like two-thirds of what I should be eating, and my hormone levels were like perfect, and I had amazing energy, and I wasn't even that hungry during the day. Like I'd have breakfast, and then if I was out in the sun for most of the day, I'd usually like avoid like the real harsh times, just because the UV gets pretty strong in where I was in Vietnam. Um, but then yeah, I'd just be having dinner. And my mentor as well. My mentor lives in Nicaragua, and I've seen him like firsthand. He weighs like 100 kilos, and he eats like 2,000 calories, but he's just so connected to nature. And that 100 kilos is like he's jacked. Like he looks great. And like he lives like in the middle of nowhere with not much EMF around. Eats locally, and he's like living by a bunch of volcanoes as well. So yeah, I mean, it just like you're never going to find like the science that's going to talk about this stuff, because it's obviously hard to measure. But it's just like give it a go for yourself and see how you go. Um, yeah, it's just super interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and that was kind of my point is that when we think about health and or just how our bodies work, it's not taught, it's not talked about, and it's so easily overlooked. But I definitely agree with you. Like the more I've started to do these things, things that are popular and uh, in the what Jack Cruz teaches about, and then in the circadian biology world, just like the more I get up and catch the morning sunrise, the more I'm outside in general, and this, especially at sunset too. Like the better I just get this momentum, and the better I start feeling. And on one hand, it's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like we growing up, it's like kids get out of the house, go play because that's what kids are supposed to do. It's good for you. I think in the past it was much more common for like hospitals or medical facilities, especially inpatient, to have courtyards or places where people, trees and campuses where people could go be outside, or wheelchairs could be wheeled outside. And just known. It's like this is good for a person that, well, anybody, but especially if you want to heal and rebuild your health. And yeah, it's quite amazing. On one hand, it's kind of ridiculous how much we've lost that we have to have these conversations and dig into all the science to prove to ourselves, yeah, get outside, get in the earth, be in nature more. But on the other hand, the more I listen to podcasts, people like you, other people teaching, it really builds the motivation. So that's just kind of our modern society and the way we're geared to and what we're motivated by. And so if that helps, then we'll do it that way.
All other animals. I mean, I'm literally looking down from my balcony right now, and I can just see two dogs just like grounded outside. And it's what time is it? It's like 6:30 in the morning, so the sun just rose. Um, so yeah, I mean, and I can hear birds. I can see squirrels. Um, so it's just like we've just lost that basically. And like all this stuff we're talking about, it's free of charge. Like it doesn't cost you a cent, except for I guess the component of opting for local food and things of that nature. But I mean, like muchness basically to what everyone else is really eating. But yeah, all this stuff is just free, and obviously there's a bit in that in terms of that it is free. Why would uh, you know various people who are higher up than us want to encourage people to do stuff that's free when they can make a bunch of money from us when we're sick? And the best way to make us sick is to detach us from the environment that we're literally meant to thrive in, which is just literally just being outside, and copying nature, right? So it's just like I think it's more of like a control component of it as well. Um, and yeah, at the end of the day, you can make a bunch of money from sick, controllable, fearful people, and that's exactly what the modern human race is.
Yeah. Yeah, we've certainly turned into that. And yeah, and even even I just think it's an element of business. Like healthcare is a business, and
Mhm.
it pays bills, and it's directed by business people. And within that, that's not to say within that there's not good-hearted people or people that care. I think the vast majority do. But from my perspective, like the system is more powerful and more in charge than people's individual goodwill. So even people with good intentions get plugged into the system. The system is built, like for sure in the US and a lot of the Western world, we're all connected and run similarly now. It's built to treat sick people. That's it. So you're the best customers are sick people, and there's nothing about it. I mean, to what I said at the beginning of the episode, you will never go into an office and hear a discussion, someone saying the things you're saying and detailed breaking down how important it is for your hormone levels, your organs, everything running in the body, these foundational pieces. And the more you get these foundational pieces right, the body's resilient and it's going to handle these stressors of the modern world. We've got the reverse. We've lost them, lost a lot of these fundamentals, like we talked about, and we've got it. Everyone's kind of trained. Everyone's within the system to line up to go in the doctor and be fixed. It's like, keep crashing our cars and going to the mechanic instead of learning how to drive straight on the road for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it goes even beyond just the light stuff too. It's about like stress and trauma and what's going on in the modern world in terms of that. Like the amount of stress that we go through just like through our day to day in terms of like finances or our jobs or whatever it may be, relationships and stuff. That's taxing in itself as well. Trauma is a huge one. Movement as well. Like people are not moving; people are just sitting inside, and that's another issue in terms of just staying inside all day. You're literally just dehydrating yourself, and that's tied to the fascia story as well. Breathing, everyone's like a mouth breather now, right? Including myself, I was, and that would have been playing such a big role. And it's just like, why aren't they even talking about any of this stuff that is like is just playing such a big role? Water and hydration as well, like our tap water. I mean, I don't think we need to talk about it, to be honest. Like, it's just wild, honestly. Like, it really is.
So I want to go back to your story about the using some of these principles, this knowledge to actually implement it in your life, and then those changes you got. So where did you start, or what changes did you make that helped you utilize all this information you were finding, and what did you see start changing?
Yeah. So for me, it was attacked from three angles. So I had the stress trauma component, I had a drug and alcohol component, or just like a low dopamine component, so to speak. And then I also had, yeah, the light environment component. And when I'm talking about light, I'm also talking about the seasonality of nutrition, everything we've spoken about, basically. Um, so yeah, I addressed all three from different angles. Stress and trauma, like a lot of people say it doesn't work, but cognitive behavioral therapy worked really well for me. So that was one of them. And then just incorporating like nasal breathing and a bit more gratitude and things of that nature. And then drugs and alcohol, I just literally just stopped. I was yeah, like in Melbourne, if like it's a pretty big like party scene per se, lots of nightlife and stuff. So you kind of get like grown into it basically. And then once you dig a hole so deep, it's just like your dopamine so low that you just keep doing it, even though like you've had a big weekend or whatever, and you feel like shit the whole week. And you're like, I'm never doing this again. And then as soon as you start feeling better again, you just do it. So withdrew myself from that, which was hard, and a lot of discomfort. But yeah, within a couple of months, I started to feel a bit better. And then, yeah, this is when I was starting to learn about the light related stuff and just nature and all those kinds of things. And I felt like in my life, I was always gravitating towards something like that. I just was never able to relate to it, or was unsure whether it was correct or not, even though like thinking about it now and like talking about it, like as we said, it just like makes so much sense. Um, so when I came across like, I think I came across like a book like Circadian Code. Found a few things online, listened to a bunch of podcasts. Eventually came across Jack Cruz, and that was just like a whole other level that I unlocked. Which because his knowledge is just insane. But again, it's like it's just tying it back to the basics. But yeah, I mean, I started to feel incorporating these things, I started to feel pretty good within. Oh, another one as well was my sleep. My sleep was really bad as well. Just wanted to touch on that. That yeah, I had a form of like mild sleep apnea where I'd wake up every 10 times an hour. So that's obviously like a breathing component to that. Um, Tied to like what's going on in the brainstem and breathing mechanics, and probably just facial cranial posture as well, and stress and all those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, once I started to address this sort of stuff, like, I mean, it does take time. Like, I think people are also just trying to find like solutions within like a couple of months, but it's just unrealistic. I think I started to really feel like myself after 6 months. Um, and then I think after like 12 months, I was like, yeah, this is it. Like, I'm like, this is how we are meant to be feeling. And it's quite a powerful feeling. It's just like your clarity is just so high, your awareness. You can literally see the world for what it is, which is also like a somewhat liberating feeling to feel that. And then, yeah, you just have like, I mean, I used to always say that, yeah, I felt like, if you've seen the movie Limitless, Bradley Cooper, on that. I don't know can't remember his actual name on the movie, but he's just like he can learn, he can work out. He's just full of energy and full of focus, and it's just like that's exactly how I felt, how I feel now, compared to what I was. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. I think it just takes a bit of time and patience, and just understanding that health is not it's not like completely linear either, right? It's like, we're always thinking of, for those who are not on video, it's just like this uh, upward line. But no, there's like lots of dips and dives in it, right? And I think it's just like appreciating that you're on the journey and you're doing the right thing. And yeah, you just take it day by day, and you'll notice, even just, yeah, day by day, week by week, you start to notice improvements in your health. Definitely.
Yeah, that's really important point because going back to our training and mindset, we're used to go get the pill and you'll feel different in 24 hours or a week at longest. But that type of change just doesn't last because it's not foundational. So I think people start to make changes and they don't stick with it long enough just because that's a total contrast to what they're used to and what they've been
Yeah,
taught.
can I just add actually? Sorry, before I forget as well, it's just the fact that, yeah, I think people want to take the path of least resistance as well. So people are constantly chasing like a protocol or a supplement, or yeah, like just again, like maybe even a pharmaceutical or whatever, just to make themselves feel better, to get from A to B as quick as possible, right? A being what I was, for example, and B being how I feel now, or whatever, sick versus healthy. Um, and it's just like people are just not willing to face their flaws, I guess, because it is a hard thing to face. Like facing that you may have to like change your life and your lifestyle and your where you live, and you may have like trauma and things of that nature, and or your light environment or whatever it may be. Everything I've spoken about is just like being having to face that it is difficult. Like it's a very very hard pill to swallow that you need to change, and like it's like you have to blame yourself for where you got. It's no one else's fault, right? So I think it's just an important point, because I do see it a lot where people are like, oh, I'm hoping this supplement will help me out a lot and stuff, and it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. Supplements are supplements. Address the fundamentals first, and then if there is like generally that's more than enough to move the needle. And it's like, yeah, use supplements as a crutch, basically.
No, it resonates, man. I One hard truth that I had to come to when my health was totally just fell out was that some of the things I think, how can I put this? What I think I know about health, some of that's wrong. And the more sure I was, the more my mind was close to that, the more pain it created, the longer it made my health journey. So it is really tricky because we got so much information, so much blasted at us. We have a society, again, a system that presents itself as very confident and says this is the way health works. Here's what needs to be done, and you'll never get better until you let go of some of that. And for most people, it takes hitting a pretty low point, feeling pretty miserable, until you finally are like, it's like banging your head against the wall. You step back, you're like, all right, this can't all be correct. There has to be, something off here. And then you start to open your mind and look at different things, and it can take you a different way. But I just remember, yeah, banging my head against the wall, like doing over and over. I'm like, well, I'm doing all these healthy things until I finally had the moment where like, maybe these aren't healthy. Like these things I assume to be true, some of them have holes in them.
It's just half truths, basically, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like, and tying it back with like the whole exercise component, in terms of working out like indoors under artificial light. It's like, yeah, look, it's half true, like that the movement's good for you, but the light side of things and doing it late at night, as you said, like, the light, and the movement late at night, like the intense exercise, and then eating dinner late at night. It's like, no, it's just like that half truth has just been unwound to be a lie, basically. Um, so yeah, it's just a matter of, as I said, copying nature and whatnot to be and mitigating the modern world. But yeah, it's the same with diet as well. There's like thousands of diet books, but then once you understand that, like, that your diet is just attuned to what's going on around you and Mother Nature and what's seasonally available and locally available, then it's like you never have to buy or listen to that dogmatic diet stuff ever again. Like, there's people, obviously, there's the animal based people, the vegan people, the carnivore people, the paleo people, but it's like, no, it's just like you follow the diet by Mother Nature and where you live, and that's all you need to know. That's nutrition 101.
Can we dig into that a little bit more? Can you explain what happens, why that's good, and then conversely, like the pineapples and mangoes you're eating, why why that doesn't work?
So if we think about like the summertime, the endless summer again, let's flash back to that because I think this has been it's a good analogy throughout the whole episode. So we can just keep referring back to it. But again, like when you're tying it back to the cortisol spikes and the high light cycles, it's pretty much programming you to be uh, wanting high amounts of carbohydrates. And again, it's just not sustainable to be eating that much all the time, tying it back to what's going on at complex one of the mitochondria and inflammatory signals and things of that nature as well. But also the fact that it's also tied to deuterium and hydrogen as well. So within foods, there's hydrogen, but there's also something called deuterium, which is another form of hydrogen, but it's double the atomic mass. And it's found more, like, for example, where I am, I'm at like the 16th latitude in Thailand, and the water here would be high in deuterium, but the UV light here helps offset that. It's like almost like you can treat like information like ones and zeros, right? So like hydrogen's one, deuterium zero, and our body pays attention to that ratio, um, and it will act accordingly, basically. And again, as I said, it's just like that UV light. Melanin's playing a big role there in terms of depleting that deuterium, or putting it in the right places because it does serve somewhat of a function. Um, but if we are in isolated blue light constantly, or in the summer of like somewhere at a higher latitude where the UV isn't as strong, that deuterium can also play a role in terms of like the inflammatory signals in a positive fashion, right? But it's only detrimental when it is in that endless summer without the UV, right? Um, so there is a bit of truth in terms of like low carb in the winter, and ketosis to a degree. And again, this is also the opposite as well. Like if we think about cold, cold increases like something called CD36, which is a taste receptor on our mouth for fatty acids, right? There's a bit in that. Cold also increases bile acid synthesis. So that's going to affect how we digest fats. And then if we're looking at UV light, like vitamin D and nitric oxide in themselves also influence insulin signaling and things of that nature as well. So it's just like putting yourself in the right environment. And again, tying it back to the seasonality component, it's just like we got to think of food not only as energy, but it's also energy is always found with information. They are like interchangeable terms, basically, mean different things, obviously, but whenever there's a transfer of energy, there's always information tied to it. So if you're giving your body the wrong information in terms of light or food or whatever it may be, this is where diseases occur, basically. It signals the mitochondria wrong, signals this whole cell wrong, basically, the nucleus. There's communication directly from the mitochondria and the nucleus, signals the organs like communicating with each other. And again, we've got that circadian component as well, like running the whole whole operating system. So it just creates this chaos because it's just like we're getting all different inputs of information and our body literally doesn't know what to do. Because like these sort of things are like literally, processed foods and the availability of all foods around the world. This is only like recent. We haven't even adapted to it, and that's same with the light stuff as well. And then throw in the stress and trauma and the breathing mechanics being dysregulated and all those kinds of things. And yeah, it's just absolute chaos basically.
Yeah, and when you put it in the terms of information, that really makes sense in my mind because a lot of things you described, you're like, actually, this thing in isolation, it's not bad, right? It's the summer cycle, more carbs. It's not bad by itself, but it sounds like what you're saying is, but also the body needs to cycle. It needs balance. It doesn't need that one thing 100% of the time. And if we look to nature, there's complete cycle, from the day to the year, the seasons of the year. And then with our modern world and all the advancements in technology and even say the food that can be shipped all around the world, that information is suddenly changed and it's not that one consistent message from the environment, the local environment. You can get messages from all over the world in terms of food. You can get mixed messages because we manipulate the temperature. And as you keep mentioning all these different inputs, it's like, yeah, okay, I could see how the body can get confused. And if that's the operating system's trying to run off that information and it's getting told 10 different things, imagine trying to listen to 10 people speak 10 different languages at once. Like you're just going to go crazy. And sounds like that happens in our body a little bit.
Absolutely. And another great example is, being here in a tropical place and looking at what kind of plants are grown here versus what grows in like high latitudes. It's like you'll never find like a palm tree like with coconuts on it in a latitude outside of the tropics, basically. And that's just one example. So it's like that can be almost considered information per se. It's like information of what's going on in our environment. The animals are different as well. Generally, you find that people look different, like from different locations, right? It's like informational input to what's going on in our environment, basically. And that's another thing, I guess. It's like people who are from specific locations, like say someone equatorial, someone, for example, from Thailand, they go to like somewhere in south of Australia or, at a higher latitude of America, it's going to be hard for them to thrive because they're out from their environment, unfortunately, and they have to put in the extra work. They're not going to be able to uncouple in their mitochondria properly, which means they're not able to release heat, which is literally an adaptation for Northern Europeans, right? That we can handle the heat in the we can heat ourselves up better in the cold, but then we don't get as melanated in the tropics, right? Depending on how much effort you put in. Like I try my best, but there's information everywhere, right?
Yeah. So how do you do this with a client? Where do you start people at to begin with?
My way of attacking it is that, like, obviously, like a lot of coaches or just naturopaths, nutritionists, or doctors in general, they just give you a couple of plans and don't really go much deeper. Maybe they'll have a call. But yeah, with my programming, my aim of the game is not just to do that. Like I will do that, but it's like to empower you to be able to like formulate those on your own, basically, right? And that can be passed down to your family and loved ones, friends, and all that kind of stuff. And really just like empowering them with all of this knowledge for it to all click, basically. Um, so how I go about it is, yeah, I mean, like it's all about, I look at everything, basically what we spoke about, like in terms of like what's your light environment like, where do you live, what's your origin. It's important to know like their mum's mum as well, like just like from the mums, so mum and grandma and all that stuff, because that's tied to what's going on with their mitochondrial origin to a degree. And just asking the right questions, looking into like their posture as well is a big one, and breathing, sleep, and nutrition, and generally like a lot of what I do, and obviously like blood work and all those kinds of things can be cool little tools as well, which I enjoy doing, and they can help in terms of just like unraveling a bit more information. But yeah, mostly what I'm doing is just like it's a lot of just like unlearning for these people, right, and relearning, because at the end of the day, we're just so far deep into understanding things a certain way that are somewhat arguably incorrect, that it takes a bit to unlearn and unravel it, and then relearn these principles, right? Because some people, like if you had someone, if you showed this to like maybe not like a close relative, but like, for me, like maybe like a random cousin or something, and they listen to this podcast, they'd be like, what the fuck is this bloke on about? It's like,
Yeah.
this is so backwards to what we've been taught. And it's absolutely correct. It is completely backwards, probably by design, right? So, yeah, it's a lot of that. And look, every client's different. The way I handle it is different as well, depending on their symptoms and their goals and their concerns and whatever it may be. So it's just very organic in terms of how I handle it. And yeah, it just depends on the client, because some client might be really well educated in terms of like maybe movement and biomechanics and breathing and the mindfulness component, but then not have much of an idea on the nutrition and light stuff, or vice versa, right? So it's good to just attack it from the angles that they require. So I don't really have like a set thing, but yeah, it's just asking all those right fundamental questions.
Yeah, yeah. Fair enough. I guess so if someone's listening to this, say some of these ideas are new, especially the breadth that you've laid out, like all these different factors that can affect it. So let's just look at the light. Is there simple thing or two things a person could start considering doing to begin implementing this and changing what they're doing?
Get outside is a big one. Get outside and throughout the day. So like getting out at sunrise is going to be a big one. Like first thing you should do, just boom, out of bed, go outside. Sunrise, even if it's just for like a couple of minutes, that's better than nothing. And then that outside component can be shifted throughout the whole day. If there's something you can do that is possible to do outside, for example, eating your food or working. Like for example, for me, I'm outside right now, and I will continue to work outside here all day just because I have the option to, and I know how beneficial it is. But yeah, for people who aren't working from home, it's just like getting like just getting outside as much as you can throughout the day. Having those light breaks per se, if you are working in an office, just because you've got to remember the sun is dynamic. It's constantly going up and down, right? So it's giving you different information throughout the day. Whereas like the information that you get from an office light or a downlight, it's just going to be this static 12 p.m. sort of information into your circadian biology. And another one is just, yeah, in terms of the light stuff as well, is just getting a pair of blue light blocking glasses and wearing those after sunset and before sunrise, basically. And if we take it a step further, I think that's a great step in the right direction. But another thing to do is like get a couple of red bulbs or like candlelight, and really maximizing darkness. We got to remember the yin and yang, right? So we really have to optimize the dark side of things as well. The glasses help to a degree, no doubt, and it's a great step in the right direction. But I want to like bring it up to that next level of doing those sort of things for your light environment after sunset, basically. So yeah, they're probably like the biggest needle movers. I think the biggest one is just get outside. Like just get outside.
Yeah, yeah, and even as I'm listening, I'm like, man, it's so easy for people to hear that and just not really take it with the full like importance that it carries, and again, it just speaks to our some of our modern programming because people can
Yeah,
hear like, yeah, it'd be a good idea for me to get outside, but it's like, no, every
yeah,
every hormone and process in your body is running off it. That's why it's a good idea. And just look at the health results of the average person. If and you can see that what's normal is not leading very good places.
absolutely. Like, and a good example is like I have a client right now. He happens to be an in-person client that I meet. He lives in Southeast Asia as well, but he's been traveling around a bit, and he was having issues with gyno. And for those who don't know, it's just like fat deposits in like the chest area and the stomach. Um, and yeah, like he was somewhat aware of like the nutrition side of things and stuff, but wasn't too aware of the light stuff. And he's Jamaican as well, Jamaican heritage, so he could go pretty dark. And he wasn't. I was probably darker than him when I first spoke to him, and we had an in-person consult. And because he was traveling around a lot, which again, that's taxing in itself, not having that routine, flying around and stuff. And I hadn't seen him for like 3 months, but I saw him a couple of days ago. And the advice I said to him, because I mean, there's obviously some supplements that you can use that are going to be helpful in that regard, in terms of regulating estrogen and detoxifying it and all those kinds of things. But I was just like to him, eat more seafood, eat more diversity, eat local, and just get outside as much as you can. I'm like, you are built for it. You are literally a solar panel that wants light all day, every day. And yeah, he took that on board and he did it as much as he can. I saw him, yeah, a couple of days ago, and it's like it's somewhat resolving a lot actually. And I was taken away by it. I was like, wow, like I would have thought, not might need that extra nudge in terms of supplementation and stuff, but yeah, he looks amazing, and it's just like sometimes that's all it takes, right? And all that stuff is free. So it's just like these health issues. It just when you come back to copying nature and again mitigating the effects of the modern world, your body knows what to do. It literally knows what to do. It doesn't have all that information overload, and it just gets confused, and hormones are all over the place. It literally sorts itself out, which is just amazing and starts to heal. And then you start, and he's even said like he's feeling like amazing as well in terms of like mentally speaking. So yeah, it's pretty cool what the simple fundamental stuff can really do.
Yeah, yeah, and I completely agree with you. When you get in the right sequence, whatever that is, it can feel a little complicated to, but really we're just unwinding a complicated system we've created. And when you get in the right zone for you, for your body, things click, and it does seem just amazingly simple, astonishingly simple. But Jack, this has been great. If people want to work with you, they want to follow more of your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So, firstly, thank you for having me. This was a really, really good conversation. I love talking about these mechanisms and going deep into all this sort of stuff because I'm very passionate about it. So, to find me, to work with me, just jackschroder.com, and you'll be able to book a consult with me. And again, it would just be tied to everything I spoke about earlier about how I go about my coaching. And then Instagram is Jack Schroder underscore, and X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, is Jack underscore Schroder underscore. And then also in the next month or so, I will have a school community, and that's going to be catered to. It's going to be called Men's Decentralized Health for the time being, but it's catered to not only men who are somewhat educated but want to become their own doctors per se and understand stuff on a bit of a deeper level, but also for coaches and practitioners that want to learn more about this stuff that we've spoken about in this episode. So stay tuned for that. That will be mostly advertised on Instagram and my website. But yeah, that's everything I think. So yeah, no, really, really good conversation. I appreciate you for having me on.
Yeah, likewise. I enjoyed it. Great on the links. We'll link to all that in the show notes. And thanks again.
Thanks, man.